Hello everyone. In this video we are going to explore three very powerful array methods that we didn't cover in our last video or activity on arrays. The three methods we're going to talk about today are map, reduce, and filter, and you can do all kinds of cool things like transforming data and other sort of data analysis type stuff. So these are really good ones to know about, and we'll see them used in future classes in this program too. Okay, so here's the starter code. You can grab that from the page that has the video on it, and here it is in VS Code. So I just created a sample file and pasted the starter code into it, and here's what we have to start with. So it's the same data that we worked with in the arrays video. We've got scorers, pets, and employees. So if you scroll on down past those sample arrays, the first one that we're going to talk about is the map method. Okay, now this method returns a new array of elements that are based on the original array. So you kind of have to see this in action to really understand what it is. The parameter that you pass in is a callback function, so we're still trying to get used to working with those because those can make it a little bit trickier to understand exactly how everything works, because you have to understand the parameters that can be passed into the callback function, which is used as a parameter that's passed into the map method. So it's a little bit confusing. It takes a little bit of practice. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We've got, we're going to start with our array of pets. So we've got 3 pet names in that array, an array of 3 strings. So I'm going to scroll back down here to the comments on the map method, and here's where we're going to get going. Okay, we can declare. Okay, let's just say here's what we want to do. We want to take each string in the array and we want to wrap it in li tags. Okay, this is a perfect example of when you might want to use the map method. So we can transform the array of strings into a new array of strings that are wrapped inside of li tags. I'll show you what I mean here. So let's just say we want to display these, each pet name in a list item. So that's why we want to wrap them each in li tags. Here we go. We can do const pet list items equals, I could type here, we're going to take the pets array and call the map method. Okay. Now the parameter that you have to pass into the map method is an arrow function. So let's set that up first right there. So we'll put our arrow function inside. That's what we pass in as a parameter. The parameter that the callback function takes is going to be the current element. So I'm just going to use P for pet because the current element is going to be a pet name. So I'll just call it P. I think in the last video we were calling it CE for current element. But P is good because it represents a pet name. Okay, and now what we can do here is inside the body of this callback function, we want to return, and we're going to return a string that has an li opening tag at the beginning of it, and then we're going to concatenate the current element, which is our P variable, and then we're going to concatenate the closing li tag at the end like that. Okay, so a few things. So here's what we're doing is we're transforming strings into strings that are nested inside of li elements. Okay, now this will work, but as you know, we can abbreviate these arrow functions a little bit. So I'm going to do that right now. If there's one and only one parameter in your arrow function, then you can omit the parentheses for the parameter. And then we can also, since we just have, all we're doing inside the body of the callback function right here is we're just returning a single expression. So that means what we can do is we can omit the curly braces and the return keyword. So I'm going to chop it off on that side and then chop off that curly brace right there. Okay, and there's what our finished code is going to look like right here. So let's just go ahead and console log the return value, which is pet list items. Okay, save that, go back over to the browser, reload the page, And here's what we get. We get an array of strings that have we can use as li elements, and then we could append those to the page. And we'll be getting into that more once we talk about the DOM a little bit further on into this course. Okay, let's see here. Let's do another example just to get some practice right here. Let's go ahead and let's say we need an array of all the employee names, their first and last names. So let's take a look at what we've got here. We've got an array of employee objects. Each one has a first name property and a last name property. Let's just say we need an array of strings, which is just the first and last name of each employee. Okay, so here is a good use case for the map method. We want to transform this array, the employees array, into an array of strings that's just first name and last name. So here, let's do another example right here, right underneath our previous one. And let's go const employee names equals employees. And we're going to call the map method on that employees array. So we'll set everything up like that. Okay. And the parameter that you pass in to the map method is a callback function. So we can put an arrow function in here. Go ahead and set that up. There's my arrow function. Okay, the parameter that gets passed into the callback is the current element. So let's just use E for employee. Okay, and what we want to do is return a string that's just the current element's first name and last name concatenated together. So inside the curly braces right there, I can do return E dot first name, and then we'll concatenate a space, I guess, in there. So I'll concatenate just a space like that, and then we'll concatenate E dot last name into that string. Okay, so that should work, but we can abbreviate this a little bit. I just want you guys to get used to abbreviating it a little bit. Again, since there's one and only one parameter in our arrow function, we can remove the parentheses there, okay? And since we have a single return statement inside the body of the arrow function, we can remove the curly braces and the return keyword. So I'm going to remove it right there, and then remove the closing curly brace right there. And there's what our finished example is going to look like right here. So let's go ahead and console log employee names and see what we get. Okay, save it, Alt-Tab back over to the browser, reload the page, and there we go. Right here we have an array with strings, and each string is a first and last name of an employee. So you can use the map method on an array to transform the original array into a new array, and you want to transform each element. And that's what happens inside the callback function. Whatever you return is going to be a new element in the returned array right here. So remember the map method, it returns a new array. So that's our new array right over here. Good. Okay, so we'll be working with the map array a lot this semester. We'll practice it to get better at it, but you can do a lot of powerful things with it. By the way, when we learn React in the upcoming web class, we'll be using map all the time in it. It's very common in React. Okay, let's move on to the filter method right here. So the filter method returns a new array, but it's a subset of the original array. So you can filter out elements into a new array. This is super useful too when you're doing like data processing or data analysis. Let's see how this works here. I think you can read my little description right here if you want, but I think it's better if we just dive into an example. So here we want to create an array of all the employees that earn more than $50,000. Okay, let's take a look at our data set here, the employees array. So every employee has a salary property, and here it is. So let's say we want to filter all the employees out of this array, and we want to just include the ones that meet the requirements down here that have a salary of, what is it, greater than 50K? Yep. Okay, so that's what we're going to do right here. So let's, right here underneath this comment, we can go const highest paid employees equals, and then we'll take our array, which is employees, and we'll call the filter method on it. Okay, so there we go. I set the table. The filter method is one of those methods that takes a callback function as a parameter. Now we could use an old school function where we type in the keyword function, just like we did all through Web Programming 1, but we're using arrow functions now. So go ahead and put in an arrow function, and then we'll tweak it as we go here. So there's my arrow function, and the parameter that gets passed into this callback function is going to be the current element. So I'm just going to use E for employee. And then over here, what we want to do is, now this callback function has to return true or false. Look at that. The callback function, I said the param here is a function that returns true or false. If it returns true, then the current element will be included in the returned array right here. Okay, you'll see how this works right here. So we need to return true or false. So we can go return, and we're going to take the current element and look at its salary property. If that's greater than, what did we say, 50,000, then we want to return true. And now I'm using the conditional operator, which we should have learned already by now. Otherwise, I'm going to return false like that. You know what? I don't even need to do that. I'm overthinking this. All I need to do here is that, just like that. So this is a Boolean expression that we're returning right here. And if that's true, we're going to return true. If that's false, we're going to return false. So I was overthinking it right here. Okay, now we can abbreviate this arrow function a little bit. So there's only one parameter for our arrow function, so I can remove the parentheses there. It's got a single return statement in it, so I can remove the return and the curly braces. So I'll remove that, and then I want to come over to the other side here and remove the closing curly brace, and then there's our final result right here. Let's go ahead and console log the return value of the filter method, which is our variable highest paid employees. Okay, save that, and let's see what we get here. Clear the log, reload the page. Now it looks like we have an array with 6 employees. Let's open this up a little bit. It looks like each one of them has a salary of over 50,000. Okay, so you see what we did there is we took a large data set and we filtered elements from it and made a new array. Okay, so it's important to note that the employee array has not changed. The employees array, I should say, that has not changed. All we're doing is we're taking elements that match criteria and putting them in a new array. Do I have another example here? I guess that's the only example of the filter method, but hopefully you can see how that can be super useful, and that we'll be using that throughout the rest of this course too. Okay, now the reduce one is the trickiest one of all. And the reason why is because it takes multiple parameters. So the map and the filter methods, we've just passed in a callback function, but this reduce one takes a callback function and another parameter. Now this one is tricky to wrap your head around, but what it allows you to do is to take an array and reduce it to a single value. That sounds kind of weird, but some examples of what we might want to do, and these are things we're going to do right now, is you want to take the array of all the scores and figure out their sum. So you're going through an array and you're going to reduce it to a single value, which is going to be the sum of all the scores in the array. Okay, now this one takes a little bit of practice, but hopefully with some practice you'll start to get comfortable with it. So you've seen how we can get the sum of all numbers using an old school for loop, and there's nothing wrong with that. You could continue to use that approach, but programmers like to do things in a single line of code. So a lot of programmers will lean towards the reduce method. Here's what it looks like. We're going to take our, let's do this. We'll go const sum equals scores. There's our array that we want to reduce to a single value. So we call the reduce method. And then now this takes a few parameters here. The first one is going to be a callback function. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and set up my arrow function. And then right after that closing curly brace, put a comma. And then we're going to pass in, you have to pass in an initial value. Okay, so we're going to start the sum off at 0. So we're going to put 0 in for that second parameter. Okay, all right. Now this is more complicated also because the callback function has more stuff in it too. The callback function is going to have what they call the accumulator. That's the first parameter. So that's actually going to be the sum that we're going to keep our running total of the sum. This is a little bit strange here. I'm just going to call it S for sum right there. Okay, and then the second parameter is going to be the current element. So I'll use CE here. Okay, I don't know if I like these parameter names, but so this is going to be the running total, and then I'll show you what we do inside the body of this arrow function right here. So go into the curly braces, and we're going to take our S parameter. That's what we're trying to keep a running total of, and we're going to add the current element to it. So I'll go S plus CE. Okay, kind of strange. Now this should give us the sum of all the numbers in the scores array. Let's see how this works. And we can go back and we could, you know what? I forgot my return statement here. I actually don't need the return statement here if I remove the curly braces. So we want to return this is the running total is what we're returning. So we're going to have to talk about this in class and maybe practice a little bit more because this is a tricky one. Okay, but let's see what we get here for the sum. So we'll do console log sum, and let's see if I can figure it out in my head. I'm not very good at math, but if I scroll all the way up here, oh geez, I'll never be able to figure out the sum of that. But 75, 85, 95, I don't know. That's going to be like 300 and something. Let's see what we get when we run this in the browser. Go back over to the browser, hit refresh. 340, and that sounds about right. Okay, yeah, this is a tricky one. It's going to take some practice. Let's do some more practice right now. So scroll back on down to our sample code here. We can also figure out like the highest score. So you've done this, you did this last semester too. You can loop through an array of scores and determine which one is the highest score. Okay, you just have to keep track of the current max. So here's what we can do here. Let's, for this, right underneath this comment right here, get the highest score. Let's go ahead and do const highest score equals scores dot reduce. Okay, and then the first parameter is an arrow function. So we'll put that into place. We might abbreviate that later if we can. And then the second parameter is going to be an initial value for our accumulator. Okay, we're going to start it at 0, just like we did for the previous one. Okay, and then what we're going to do right here is there's two parameters that gets passed into the callback function here. The first one is your accumulator. Now in this case, our accumulator it's going to be the max value that we're looking for. So I'm going to call that max like this. And then the second parameter is going to be the current element. So I'll just use CE for current element right here. Okay. So what we need to do inside the body of the function right here is we need to determine if the max value, our accumulator, is greater than the is greater or less than the current element. Okay, so what we want to do is return the one that's got the higher value, and that becomes the new value for our accumulator. Okay, and then that accumulator is going to go on to the next element and get passed in as that max parameter. Okay, I don't feel like I'm doing a great job of explaining this, so maybe we're going to have to just practice this a lot in class. Okay, so basically what we need to return here is the higher of the two parameters. So we can do that in a couple of different ways. I'll just go ahead and type in return like this. And then we can use, there's a math object that has a max method that we can use. And this is really the simplest way to do it. So we can, and I don't know if we've talked about this math object, it's built into JavaScript. So I might be showing you something that you haven't seen here. But there is a math object and it's got a max method. So we can set it up like that. And then you pass in a few different numbers and it'll return the max of them. So here we can pass in our accumulator, which is the max parameter and the current element, and math.max will return the higher of the two. Okay, now we can abbreviate this arrow function. I could leave it just like this if I wanted to, but we're returning the result of a single expression right here. And so that means I can omit the return keyword and the curly braces. So I'll do that and then chop off the curly brace on that side, and there's what our finished code looks like. Okay, let's see what we get for the highest score. So let's go ahead and console log it. Save that. Go back over to the browser. Reload the page. And looks like we got 95. So let's check the scores array and see what it looks like, just so we know we got what we wanted. There we go. Yep, it looks like 95 is the highest number there. Okay, another thing that I want to point out real quick right here is now I can't abbreviate this by removing those parentheses because there's two parameters there. You can only remove the parentheses of an arrow function when there's one and only one parameter. So I have to leave those there. Okay, again, this is tricky. We're going to practice a couple more here, it looks like, but I don't expect this to make perfect sense right now. But hopefully, it'll start to make more sense as we practice a little bit more. So let's say we wanted to figure out the max salary of all employees. So I'm debating if we should do this or not. We can do these two in class together, the max salary of all employees, and get the employee with the max salary. They're slightly different. So I think what I'll do is I'll defer these until you can try these on your own if you want, if you're feeling ambitious. If you get them, that'd be great. If not, we can do these two in class. So, okay, yeah, don't worry about reduce. That takes some getting used to, but hopefully the map and the filter methods make sense, and hopefully you can see how useful they are. Okay, I have one more thing I want to talk about in these videos, in this video at least, and that's chaining method calls. So here I want to show you something. Let's say what we want to do is we want to figure out the total salary, the salaries of all the people who make more than 50,000. Okay, so we're going to do things that we've already done right here. So here's what we're going to do. So we want to get the sum of all the salaries of people who make more than $50,000. So we already filtered the salaries of, or the plus $50,000 salaried employees, and we did figure out the sum. We didn't quite figure out the sum of all. Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm making a mess of this here. Just follow along here. This is what I want to show you. I probably could come up with a simpler example than what I have in front of me, but let's just go with this right here. So okay, I had to pause the video. I don't like the example that I have in my notes here, so I'm going to do a simpler one. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's do const. I'm not really sure what to call this. Let's just call this strings right now. And then let's set this equal to what we're going to filter the employees array. So we're going to take the employees array and we're going to call filter on it. Whoops, my phone's ringing. Hang on a second. Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to filter the employees array. So we'll call the filter method here. So let's go ahead and set this up with our arrow function or our callback function. It's both. And then we can, I guess we'll use E for the parameter, and that means employee. That's going to be the current element. And then what we'll do here is we want to return true if the current employee's salary is greater than 50,000. So we can do it like, I guess I'll do it the long way first, and then we'll reduce it, or we'll abbreviate it. So we could do return e.salary is greater than 50,000, just like we did before. And then I suppose I'll reduce this down. So since we're returning an expression here, we can omit the return and the curly braces. Okay, now just be careful. If I just omit the return, then it's not going to return anything. The function won't return anything. I have to also omit the curly braces too. So, okay, so that's going to filter the employees down. I can remove the parentheses here like that. Okay, so this is what we did just a few minutes ago. But now what we could do is, let's say we want to take each one of those employees and wrap their name in an LI element like what we did before. So here's the kicker. Here's what I want to show you. This is what we call chaining methods. This is going to return an array. Everything that I have selected there is going to return an array. So I can take that array and use dot notation on it and call another array method on it. So here I can choose map like that, and then I'll set up the arrow function. And then let's just return an array of employee first name and last name, just like we did before. So I need to add a parameter to my callback function. We'll use E to represent the current employee. And then here I'm gonna just omit the curly braces right away and just go right to the abbreviated version. Here we wanna return E.first name, and then let's just return the first name, I guess. Okay, so we're going to return the first name of every employee who makes more than $50,000. So what we have here is what we call method chaining. We're chaining methods together. The way these work, we should talk about this in class more too, but whatever that returns, now that returns an array, that means that we can chain on an array method after that. So kind of getting a little bit ahead here, we can talk about chaining method calls more because you see it a lot in JavaScript. So here's an example of it right here. All right. Boy, it's been a crazy day. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and see what we get in our result here, which we called strings. Console log strings. And now what it should be is an array of strings. It should be the first name of each employee who makes more than $50,000. And that was our little introduction to chaining method calls. Let's see what we get here. And there it is. So there's the first name of every employee who makes more than $50,000. So finally, I just want to point out that when you use method chaining like this, you can really do a lot of powerful things in a single line of code. So just think about how many lines of code we would have used, before we knew about these methods. Like we would have had to write a for loop. We would have had to write one for loop there's a lot of different ways we could have handled it. But with method chaining, it allows you to really write concise code. It takes some getting used to, but hopefully you'll get to the point where you can kind of read this line of code and see what's going on. So here I see we're filtering the employees array. It looks like we're returning employees that have a salary greater than 0, and then we're mapping that into just the first name of each employee. So method chaining can allow you to write really concise code And hopefully some people think it's even more readable because it's only one line, but it does take some getting used to. Okay, this video got out of hand, but that'll do it.